Hey, Instagram, if you're on, let me know. I'm just getting set up here on the other side. All right. And hey, oop, all right. Hey, YouTube friends. Hey, Facebook. Hey, LinkedIn. Give me just one quick second and we're going to get started. All right. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. And I'm sorry I'm coming in a little bit late. We had a couple of technical issues. And so if I fall out on Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn, just know I'm over on Instagram. Instagram is usually pretty reliable when I go live, but let's jump right into it. So good evening, everybody, and welcome. So I have been thinking a lot about professional development recently, and if you've been in my little corner over here in the internet for any length of time, you probably know that after 12 years of being a public school music teacher, 8 of those years I was a clinician, a curriculum developer, working with teachers and things and presenting around. 6 of those years also as an adjunct professor working with graduate music education students, usually in service music educators getting their master's degree in music education. But after 12 years and all of that, I decided to found my own educational consulting company. And so I do that full time now. We began last June. And I've been doing lots of traveling, going to lots of conferences. It's conference season for Music Education Association. So all the states that didn't have their conference in the fall, now they're having it in the spring. So doing a lot of traveling around. Actually, I'll be in Jacksonville, Florida this weekend to present at the Organization of American Kodály Organization, their national conference. I'm looking forward to seeing my friends out there, and several more coming up after that. And then also on top of that, traveling also to work with different school and music, district music teams, all kind of throughout the US. And so I've been doing a lot of PD recently, a lot of coaching. And so I've been thinking a lot about the difference between just good quality or effective PD and just like ho hum kind of PD, especially when it comes to music educators, right? And so as I do conference presentations and I go and do workshops and half days and coaching teachers in their classroom, I've been thinking a lot about this idea of what makes specifically a PD effective for music educators, especially thinking about the variety of needs that our discipline has on us, right? At any one time, a music educator could have literally hundreds, or I've even seen teachers that have thousands of kids, right? They serve multiple schools and they're doing different programs and things. And it's crucial, right? Especially when you have lots of kids who are looking to you to lead that program, that you yourself are supported and you have what you need. So I was thinking a lot about this idea of PD. And so I thought I would just come on and talk a little bit about effective PD specifically for us as music educators. And I thought actually, as I was thinking like what I would come on tonight and talk about, I realized actually it's like a really big topic. So I'm actually going to come on 7 times, and I might even come on a few more times, but definitely 7 over the next few weeks on Mondays and Wednesdays. I'm going to be traveling, of course, so there might be a couple of Wednesdays and Mondays that I'm not able to show up. But for the most part, on Mondays and Wednesdays, I'm going to be breaking down this big idea of effective PD for music educators and what the different components are. And so tonight, I wanted to talk about probably the most important part of effective PD. And hey, Jocelyn, for music educators, the most effective part is that actually it's content specific PD, music content specific, right? So, like I said before, I spent 12 years as a public school music teacher. And during the time I taught in the schools, I was really fortunate that I taught in schools and districts that had PD that were offered to us as a school staff, as a district staff. And so I never was in a situation where I didn't have any. And I know that that's not true for everybody. And so I first want to acknowledge, I know that that is a wonderful privilege that I had, or maybe I shouldn't say privilege, because we teach everybody, teachers, educators, period, we should have great professional learning. But I don't take for granted that I taught in a place that allowed me to have access to good PD. But as a music teacher, and I think about my school PDs, right? So, every couple months there's a school PD day or an early release where we're doing PD for our school. When I think about my school PD, I think about when were the times that I actually had a music specific PD. I think of a lot of times where I went to like math PDs, so I learned about math, concepts. A lot of times going to literacy PDs, a lot of time spent in PDs that were not discipline specific, so like a social emotional learning PD or a classroom management PD or cultural competence, equity, things like that. But what I think specifically back to like when did I have a chance at my actual school to engage in PD? I can't actually think of any time that when I was at a school PD that I had music content specific. It always was kind of on me to figure out how to make it work. And so spending time in a variety of PDs, I remember specifically one of the schools I taught in was incorporating readers workshop, literacy, right, into the instructional blocks for language arts and things. And I actually learned quite a lot about readers workshop techniques that would be able to translate over into my music classroom. And so there were lots of good nuggets for me to use. But regardless, I still had to like translate and figure out exactly how I was going to use that in my music classroom, right? So it was never like a one-to-one. I could put it right in. It was always like me having to sit and ponder and think like, how am I actually going to do this in my music context? And I taught mostly general music at the elementary level and also choir. So I'm thinking for my general music kids, for my choir kids, how am I going to implement these different things? There was always a translation. So the first thing that we have to make sure we're establishing for our music teachers is that the PD that they're having is music specific, because having to do this constant translation, even if it's a great PD, right? These math PDs I went to, the literacy ones, social, emotional, cultural, great PDs, all of them. And having to constantly do this translation of how I'm going to figure out, hey, Dr. Natasha, how to figure out how am I going to make this work in my music context was kind of exhausting. And I'm not going to lie, it deterred me sometimes in taking some of these great nuggets and trying to make them work, because I never had a one-to-one. It was always figuring out how am I going to translate this and make this work, right? So when we think about how to make sure that our music educators are supported, it's important for school leaders, for district leaders to be considering, does it make sense for the music teacher to be in this math PD? And if it does make sense, what are the specific supports that we're going to make sure and make it clear and plain? Hey, Professor K, how are we going to make it clear and plain what the one-to-one translations are going to be? Because to have to be the person that has to constantly make that translation for your context is a bit inequitable, right? And so how can we make the professional learning be effective for that music teacher as well? It's got to be music content specific. That translation contributes to the exhaustion that we're all feeling. And I know that teachers everywhere are feeling that exhaustion, and there's never enough time, right? There's always this kind of like a hamster wheel feeling. I remember when I was in the classroom of like constantly trying to get this done and that done and go here and go there and check in with this kid and go, exhausting, right? Never enough time to get all of the things done. And when we consider about PD in general, like forget music content for a second, when we think about PD in general, the PD, that learning should be helping you to shortcut to success, right? The person is standing in front of you, they should be an expert who is imparting knowledge to you that's going to allow you to get from point A to point Z much quicker than if you were trying to figure it out on your own, right? And so when you have PD time, we're thinking about how to make sure that we're being the most effective with that time and not making people feel like the time was not used appropriately, right? I see Dr. Natasha is mentioning a bunch of PD aimed at one population, but all populations better be in the room and take note. Yeah, it's hard to be in that situation, right? And so when you think about this lack of time that we all have, for a music educator to be sitting in a math PD, and I remember sitting in some of these PDs, maybe I shouldn't say it, but I remember being on my phone, like scrolling through, because if there's not going to be an easily one-to-one translation, if I'm already thinking about the gazillion other things that I have to do to make me sit through a completely non-related PD to my content area, that's not going to be the best use of my time. Just like, our kids need to be engaged in things that are worthwhile and relevant, we got to be engaged in things that are worthwhile and relevant too. And so I challenge, our school leaders and our district leaders to make sure that when we are requiring everybody to be in the room, that we make sure that all of the things are going to be quality for the time. And that might mean that maybe not everybody's in the room, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with having multiple things happening at once, right? And so when we consider for music educators specifically, that music content specific kind of PD, it allows us to shortcut to get to that successful place quickly. But we can't do that if we're sitting in a PD that has nothing to do with what we're doing, right? And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that, every discipline, it doesn't matter if you're a math teacher, if you are a social studies teacher or a science teacher, everybody has specific kinds of skills that your discipline is going to require you to be not just highly knowledgeable, but like deeply understanding of how to use those things so that you can teach the kids, right? And music educators are no different. But a lot of times the PDs that I've had to sit in as a music educator were like deep in skills for something that I couldn't take over to my music classroom, my music program. And so instead I was kind of on my own, and I did quite a lot, right? on my own to figure out and really seek my own professional development situations so that I could be able to develop the music discipline skills that I knew that I needed to be able to be the best for my students. I'll give you a couple of examples. And if you want to share in the chat as well, I see you. And thank you, Dr. Natasha. It's not the easiest, I agree. And so when we're thinking about music educators, what are some skills that we need to be developing over time? It never ends, is we need to be developing our ear, just like we're working with kids to be able to develop their ear, to be able to hear concepts, to be able to create with the concepts, and to also be able to put them into the music that we're creating with them. But being able to cultivate one's ear is really a lifelong journey, right? The best music educators are always working on their ear, whether it be that they are still performing musicians, and so they're getting their artistry fed that way, or if they're just taking, courses and workshops or PD, that are allowing them to still cultivate those skills. That's not something that I'm going to be able to do in like a social emotional learning workshop to work on my ear as a music educator, right? I'll give you another example of a music discipline specific skill that we need to be able to cultivate. We need to make sure that we're being relevant and staying on top of what kinds of musical trends are happening out there, right? Of course, we should and have to ask our students what are the kinds of musical genres and styles and artists that they're listening to and engaging. And then it's our job to make sure that we're connecting those things so that the concepts and the skills and the techniques, those things change a little bit with genre, but in general, we need to just be able to teach it through this relevant lens. Well, how do we make sure that we are learning and keeping those skills up in all these different genres? Well, we need to be having PD that allows us to engage in this kind of skill building. I can't build my skills and how to teach concepts through different musical styles when I'm sitting in like a science PD or a math PD, right? So it's important that we are having workshops and PD programs that are aimed specifically at how, as a music educator, am I going to cultivate these skills to be able to continue to work on my craft so I can support my students as they're developing their craft, right? I was actually thinking of last year when I was in the classroom teaching, there was a day where, teacher shortage everywhere, sub shortage everywhere. And I remember a day where I got pulled to teach a 6th grade visual arts class, like an art class. I was teaching it was just an hour that I was pulled to do it. And it was interesting because I happen to love art. I love the arts. Probably not a big surprise. I'm a music educator. So I love art. So I was kind of excited to get to go in and to cover for my art teacher friend. And I quickly came to discover as the kids were working on this project, it was like highly technical. They were doing things with like perspective and these things. And that's about the extent of my knowledge on perspective, what I just said, the word perspective. And so as I was watching them and trying to help them a little bit, it became very clear that I just needed to basically just be there and to be a body in the room because I didn't have the knowledge or the skill to really be able to help them to do what they were doing, right? So thank goodness they were old enough that they knew what the project was. Our art teacher was fantastic, so she had left them with the materials that they needed, but I essentially had to just kind of stand there, right? And so as I was thinking about talking about the need for us to work on our music discipline skills, I was thinking about that time that I was in that art classroom, and could I have talked about art and could I have helped them to they were using like color pencils and things. Could I have helped them to do some of that? Of course. But could I have given them like the specific feedback on their techniques? Of course not, right? And so it's important to keep in mind the necessity of the skill building that we need to make when we're in these PD sessions so that we're still building those skills as well so we can be highly effective, just like a math teacher or a literacy teacher or something like that. And yeah, Dr. Natasha, I agree with you. A lot of times we're so focused on like the test score. And so I get it, right? As a school leader that has a million things on their mind, they're trying to balance and think about. And test scores are one of those things, right? And music is not typically a high stakes testing subject. I totally get it. And music is absolutely the heartbeat of your school when you make sure that the music teacher is well supported to be able to help kids to create and communicate and develop those critical thinking skills and express themselves in a way that they'll be able to take that with them forever, right? And so while we are not necessarily a high stakes testing subject, it doesn't mean that we don't also need those supports and things like that. Yeah. So then the question becomes, what do we do, right? How do we ensure that the PD that we're doing isn't just ho-hum kind of stuff, but actually is going to be highly effective? Well, we got to make sure that, what I wrote a couple notes. Oh, ensure that there's a balance between PD types. So of course, as music educators, we also need to be developing our skills to facilitate in classrooms, to support kids' social emotional health, their mental well-being, right? All of these things that are not discipline specific at all. And so I challenge our school leaders to make sure that the PD is balanced, right? Consider really thoughtfully, are there times where this is a whole staff PD, everybody has something meaningful to both contribute and to learn? Or is this a time where it is more specific to a certain group of our teachers, and thus it's going to necessitate that there's times during this PD session where maybe we're all together for a little bit, we check in as a whole school, and then we break off into groups to be able to do that. I've been in schools that have done that really beautifully, where it was kind of like a mini conference when we had our PD days, so that folks were able to kind of choose, where they wanted to go, so that the learning in that time, remember I said before, that time could really be most useful for them, right? Ask your music educators, what are your goals? What are the professional skills that you would like to work on? And then support them in seeking out those opportunities so that they can feel like they are moving forward towards their goals. I know when I was in the classroom, I was relentless, and I still am. As I spent actually 3 days last week myself doing a PD. So it's interesting being on the other side. I was in a speakers training, actually. I know I was relentless about seeking out opportunities to learn, to always deepen and refine my craft. And I think that maybe is an unusual thing. And so we're thinking about how to best make sure, excuse me, the music educators feel like they are getting their professional needs met. Just ask them. They probably have some goals that they are working on that you might not know of, but perhaps together you can support that music teacher in finding some additional goals, or finding some funding for them to take a particular course, for them to work on something that's going to better them, right? And maybe they work on that course during that PD when they don't need to be in there when I'm talking about readers workshop or something, right? And so ask the music teachers, what are your goals? What are you working on? What could be helpful for me to bring to you or to connect you to, right? It might not be a matter of you bring somebody to the school. It might be a matter of you support them with the budget to be able to go off to a conference or go take a class or something like that. When planning a PD day for your school or for the district, make sure that you're really considering how the music teachers are going to engage. Like I said before, it could be that the PD absolutely is going to be both meaningful, both what they're going to give and what they're going to get for every discipline, doesn't matter. Or maybe it's a day where there's a couple of different things happening, right? So let's consider beforehand, as we're setting up the PD, and not maybe afterwards, what are the things that we're going to make sure are in place so that everybody, music teacher included, feels like they are learning something and aren't just, in the back on their phone scrolling through Instagram or something like that. And then last, I wanted to mention, there are PD providers out there that can provide high quality music content specific PD. And so seek out those PD providers that specialize in music education and can provide that music content support on the skills that music educators are, continually working on, or maybe new skills that they're ready to add to their toolbox, but are going to be music content specific. There are people out there, and if you're looking for somebody, actually that's what I do, right? So some of you are just joining me. I see some new friends. Hey, Adrian, as I mentioned before, after spending 12 years in the classroom as a public school music teacher, 8 of those years as a clinician, workshop presenter, curriculum developer, all the things, and then 6 years as an adjunct professor. I own my own educational consulting company now. And so I specifically support music educators in centering culturally responsive and equitable practices. A lot of what we do, we're a full service firm, but a lot of what we do is professional development and coaching. We also do curriculum development and some general consulting as well. But really our bread and butter is our professional development services and our coaching. So if you are looking for a school leader and you're looking for some support for your music educator, I encourage you to reach out to me. You can send me a DM in your favorite, platform, wherever you are, or you can head to my website, which is just my name, www.ashleycuthbertson.com, and go to the contact page and send me a message, and let's chat a little bit about what supports your music educator. If it's, one, I do coaching, or if you have several, a group, if you're got a district team that needs some support, we can maybe look at doing some professional development. Right now, actually, this spring, I am offering spring coaching days, and so I still have some spots available. A spring coaching day is basically what it sounds like. So I go to the school and I work with the music teacher or teachers. So it can be if you have a couple at your school, Up to 4 is my limit, so that I have time to really spend time in the classroom with each teacher. But I go into your school and I support the music teacher right there in their classroom. That could look like doing some co-teaching, some modeling. Maybe if they're working on some curriculum things, we can sit down and work on lesson planning, unit planning, selecting appropriate repertoire and things like that. So if you're interested in, if you're a music teacher and you're interested in that, as the spring is starting to go on, it's already middle of March, those spots are starting to fill up. So make sure you reach out to me if you're a music teacher and you're looking for that. Or if you're a school leader that's looking for some support for your music teacher at your school, make sure you reach out to me as well. And I see Adrian's question, is there a list of PD consultants besides myself? Oh, that's a great question. So I happen to know many ed consultants now that I'm in this space. So Adrian, let me know, what kind of consultants are you looking for? And I can maybe, I think I have your email. Maybe I'll send you a message of a couple of recommendations. Let me know who you're looking, like what kind of support you're looking for, like what kind of things that they do. That's a great question. Where are they? How do you find a consultant? So like I said, I'm offering some spring coaching days for music teachers at their schools. And then I also offer different workshops and things like that. And if you can believe it, I'm already starting to book for summer 2023, which is crazy, and as well as the fall. And so if you know that you are ready to have somebody come support your music teachers, either in the school or at the district level, I encourage you to get in touch with me. A great way is to be on my email list. I share the different services and things I have with my email list pretty regularly, or just reach out to me directly. Send me a DM, get on my website and send me a message through my contact form. I would love to talk with you a bit about what that could look like for your school or for your district this summer or into the fall. I do have a couple more workshops coming up this spring, though. This week, I'll be releasing the registration for the April workshops that I'm doing. I just finished our March workshop last week. So thank you for those of you that came. And I have a few workshops coming up in April that will be one for music educators. That will be on a Saturday. And then I'm doing one specifically for school leaders who are looking to be able to better support their music programs. And then I'm doing another one for fine arts supervisors and music supervisors that are also developing things at their district level. So if you're interested in that, again, make sure you're on my email list. My email list, folks, get all of the good information right away. And so I think I'm probably releasing that information later this week. So make sure you just go on my website and the button to click to join my email list is right there. Yeah, I think so too, Jocelyn. There are schools that are looking to really make sure that their music teachers get what they need. And so I want to make sure I'm supporting those school leaders also as they learn how to best nuance through how their music educators can, get some support. So thank you. All right. And so that's all I had. I thought I would come on and chat for a little bit about this idea of effective PD specifically for music educators. Like I said, I'm doing a series because as I was thinking about it, it's like a lot to unpack. So I wasn't going to come on and talk for hours and hours. Oh, I guess I could, but I won't. I'll let you go. Spend the rest of your evening, or if you're watching the replay, let me know in the comments. Give me a hashtag replay so I know that you are here. I'll be back again on Wednesday with part 2 of what makes effective PD for music educators. So I hope to see all of you again there. All right, bye everybody.